In the Pledge of Allegiance?
I don't.
All right. In just a second. We have to wait for the light. And there is the light. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's early edition and special election night coverage of the Yountville Town Council meeting for Tuesday, November 4th, 2014. I'll get it right here. We will start out tonight with roll call.
Councilmember Hall.
Here.
Councilmember Moeller.
Here.
Councilmember Dornbecker.
Here.
Mayor Dunbar.
Here.
Let the record reflect that Vice Mayor Chilton is excused.
And I will ask our new Public Works Director, Joe Tagliabashi, to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll be getting back to Joe in a minute. Next up is adoption of tonight's agenda. Are there any changes or is there action on tonight's agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Moeller. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Now we will get to our introduction of Joe Tagliabashi, our new Yountville Public Works Director. Steve, are you going to handle that?
Thank you, Mayor Dunbar. It is indeed our distinct pleasure to welcome Joe to his short commute. For those of you that don't know, we're very pleased. We completed a regional recruitment for Public Works Director, and Joe's previously been working with the City of Napa in their Streets Division Supervisor, a stint with Yolo County as their Public Works Superintendent, and most recently he was with the City of Concord as their Infrastructure Manager. So we're very excited to have him, and probably one of the more unique characteristics that Joe brings to the job is that he's a Yountville resident, and as many folks know in our community, it's a unique opportunity when we're able to find somebody in some of the special skill sets that work. So we're kind of excited, and I already made plans with Joe to how he's going to use his commute time, since he used to be working all those hours. I don't want him to feel that we don't want to utilize that. But anyway, all joking aside, it is a very unique opportunity. It did create a little more work for our town clerk, because Joe has been serving the town recently as the town's representative to the NCTPA Active Transportation Commission. So with his coming on board and joining the town in our Public Works Director capacity, we will be having an ongoing recruitment to fill that position. But again, I do want to, on behalf of the organization, welcome Joe and give him a few moments if he'd like to say anything.
Sure. Thank you, Steve. Mayor, members of the council. I didn't realize when I came to live here 22 years ago that I would be having an opportunity to be a part of this organization. So I'm extremely excited to be here. I can't believe the opportunity that I've been given, and I look forward to becoming a real member of this town. So looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
I see that we have some of your team here in the audience. It's always a special occasion when we can break out the Public Works staff out here after a full day's work. So thanks all to you guys for being here and all the hard work you continue to do. And Joe, we all welcome you very much. You've been a part of the Yountville community for a long time. So while the roles may change a little bit, you're still very welcome.
Thanks so very much. Really happy to be here.
Great. We're going to move on now to a few more of our special guests. We have Joy Eldridge from the City of Napa, the Water General Manager, here to make a presentation.
Along with Mike Barnett.
And I figured you would introduce Mike and let us know. I thought for sure that when you came for a presentation, it would be raining. But
I ordered that.
Not so much.
We'll have to come back another time.
Please.
We don't really need a mic, I think, in this forum. Mike Barnett, our city manager, actually wanted to come as well. So we in the water division, after the August 24th earthquake, we were probably hit the hardest, really. The impacts to our system were significant. We immediately knew, I say immediately, within 3 hours of our EOC coming together. As you know, it hit at 3:20 in the morning. By 8 o'clock that morning, we knew we had more than 60 leaks already called in, and the phones continued to ring off the hook. So we knew, since we fix about 30 leaks in a year, we knew we needed to call in the troops. And we did that. We used mutual aid, called in Calborn, and then also quite a bit through our local OES, calling folks in. So what we have done with specifics to water is created some, I'll call it memorabilia, and a way to say thank you. And Mike wants to say a few words as well. I know there were people, I think, assessing with buildings downtown. I wasn't privy to any of that. We were locked away in the courtyard working on the water system. So I'll let Mike kind of speak to the rest of that.
Okay. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I guess I don't have to say anything. Joey just said it. I do want to be here, though, on behalf of the council and the rest of the staff. We haven't been hit hard by an earthquake in quite some time. In fact, even the last time, it wasn't nearly as impactful as this one. And it was within minutes, we knew we were going to exhaust all of our resources and have to ask for help, and we did. And Joy mentioned the water breaks. We had 120 the first week that were actually repaired, which is the equivalent of what we typically would address within a year. We were only able to do that by drawing from resources from other neighboring jurisdictions, including yours, and for many others. We had 60 different teams of building inspectors and engineers out in the field doing safety inspections within 2 days, which compared to our normal 4 people on staff. So it was pretty remarkable. We had over 10,000 different inspections. We red tagged hundreds of buildings, and over 1,200 had yellow tags. So it was very impactful, very difficult, and it was made a lot easier by cities like yours and the people, the professionals that you have on your staff that stepped up. Some even called on their own. We didn't even have to ask. Some just showed up. We had people like Joe that live in our town that worked elsewhere that just came down and offered to stay and help out. So we wanted to just take this opportunity now that we're in the recovery mode to drop by, acknowledge, say what you've done, let you know we appreciate, let you know that we owe you, and we'll be there if you have the similar need in the future.
Thank
So
you.
what we have, I would like to give a specific shout out to Nick Hickman. I remember his smiling face around 9, 10 at night, and we were working from about 5 a.m. till 9 or 10 at night, sometimes leaving at 11, pretty much every day through the first 6 days. Nick was one of the guys that came in, Nick and Ryan, specifically. I don't know if this gentleman is.
Jake helped for a couple of days.
Jake did as well, so forgive me, we had hundreds of people there, and we were all moving in and out and beyond our ride going cross-eyed. I'd like to present to you with this water bottle. We do promote tap water, we're still in a drought, don't forget that.
Here we are.
As well as a t-shirt. As you can see, it says Napa Rocks, but the water is still on. We're proud of that. Also on the back, this shows all of the entities that did provide mutual aid, that we were coordinating as we did, what like I said, the equivalent of 1 year's work for us as far as weeks in 5 days. So we were moving, we were hustling, and thank you very much for coming. Ryan?
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
And Jake, same thing. If you got that's a large there, that's an XL?
Yeah.
We
We're-
got
Wishful thinking.
that's the risk of t-shirts. And we could change it out with a double XL.
It'll stretch.
Thank you. Appreciate it. These guys not only came and stayed late hours, they were fun. I do recall that. That's how it works. You're working long hours. By the end of the week, I tell you, we're a team. It's a family at that point. It really is amazing. And we're there at 5 again, and we're doing it again. And by the next day, at the end of that week, people were saying, we'll stay longer. If you need us to, we'll stay. But we had that goal of getting things buttoned up by Friday of that week. And we did for the most part. And so also in...
Joe, if you could just go back to the mic, because we are recording and people do watch, believe it or not.
Sorry about that. Also, in an effort to thank you for your support and allowing for your staff to come down and assist us, we have water bottles for each of the council members as well as Steve. And if we need additionals, I think we need to get Joe one as well. These are for you in our way of saying thank you, and not that we're wishing it on you, but if something comes and you need additional aid, we'll be there to help you, and we will be happy to. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Did you fill those up by any chance? Thank you. don't you go ahead and leave them down there for us? And we'll get them. Michelle can take those.
This commemorative Save Water Conservation Day.
Excellent. Well, and the feeling is literally and symbolically mutual. You know, our guys didn't hesitate. You know, after a long week and thinking you've got a weekend off, you never know when you need to step up and respond. We were fortunate to not have significant structural issues here in town, and so we knew, not only by watching the media, but just from the Nixle alerts and the calls and everything, we knew that we needed to help out. So it was interesting to Joe talk about timing. Jump in, you know, right around earthquake and two-way street conversion in Napa. There's a lot been going on in our community and our neighboring communities, so it's exciting time, for better and for worse. But I was very impressed, and we've said this before, our entire council, the city of Napa, from the council to the entire staff, the business community, everybody really rallied together. We saw it with the Community Foundation and the Vintners Association with their quake relief. Assistance came from all over, and it was really impressive and a proud moment for the entire valley, frankly. We don't want to have to ever do it again, but you know, odds are in 25 years we might be having this conversation. So we know we can rise up and handle almost anything. So thank you for acknowledging our team.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have public comment. So this is any item that's not going to be talked about tonight. I'm guessing that everybody that's here is going to speak to an item that's already on the agenda. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Good night. So seeing no public come forward, we're going to go ahead straight to our consent calendar. We have 3 items there for approval. Is there action on our consent calendar?
I'll make
To approve?
second.
Okay. Motion by Moeller, second by Hall. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We have no other presentations, so we're going to get straight to our public hearing for this evening, Hill Family Estates Use Permit Amendment. Sandra.
Good evening. Tonight you have before you the use permit amendment for Hill Family Estates, and let me share some of the history with the business and the uses that have occurred on site. And in 1971, the antique fair use permit was allowed, and that use did continue over the years. In 2006, Hill Family received approval for a use permit to join the antiques fair use and to do a mixed use where wine tasting was a small component of the space, and it was limited to a 200 square foot bar area in the front room. And there was a condition of approval on the Hill Family resolution that prohibited seated service of wine tasting, and it really envisioned the antique fair to remain substantially unchanged, and it was the primary component of the use. And the wine tasting room has morphed over the years in 2 ways. The first relates to the antique fair, and the antique element of the business started to decline back in about 2009, and while there was antique stock on hand and displayed throughout the showroom, the Hill family decided not to purchase additional antique items, and instead they supplemented the retail by introducing home decor to the degree of items that you see available today. And to give you some examples, it includes platters and plates and bowls and different serving items. It includes cookbooks and candlesticks and lanterns and lamps and different memorabilia items. There's a core group of retail, but there are also items that are changed seasonally, and you may have noticed at Christmas time they bring in ornaments and other Christmas decorations. What's unique about Hill Family is you can view their showroom from the windows on Washington Street, so it has this unique interface with the street that not many businesses in town have. So the second change to the use was that the interest in wine tasting grew, and that resulted in an expansion of the wine tasting room use beyond the 200 square foot approved area, really throughout the remainder of the space. and it included new seated service for the wine tasting use. And wine tasting is conducted in 5 areas. There are the 2 bars in the front room, conducted in a bar setting. And then there is the living room, what is termed living room, in the really front central portion of the building, with the sports room in the front area on the north side of the building facing Mulberry, the rear room toward the back, also on the north side. And each of these rooms does wine tasting around a dining room table, and there are up to 10 tables, I believe, at the largest of those tables. The last room is the music room, and it's on the south side of the building, and it accommodates guests on 2 sofas, so it's a little more informal. The applicant indicates that the typical weekday occupancy is between 10 and 20 people at the tasting room, and that it's on weekend afternoons that they receive their highest occupancy of up to about 30 people. Also, there's a tour company that brings in small groups once or twice a week. And these consist of groups anywhere from 4 to 10 people. And this company provides boxed lunches that they distribute to their guests after the wine tasting. Although the applicant itself does not do any food preparation or service or conduct what is a more typical wine and food pairing. The applicant also doesn't conduct special events out of the space, and these are all conducted off-site. And the wine tasting is limited to the 2-ounce pour. There are not glasses or bottles of wine sold for consumption on site. So what the applicant seeks to do is to formalize and approve the use that has been occurring. And staff analyzed the use, and we really struggled with whether this should be approved at staff level, because over the years there have not been apparent identified impacts with the use. And we like to see that. But on the other hand, it's wine tasting use, and the council has given direction that those uses are subject to use permit, and it is acknowledged in this case that it is a significant expansion of the wine tasting use. So that's the reason it's before you tonight. So I want to go through just a couple of the issues associated with use. One is that we see the expansion of one of the uses at the same time we see a reduction in the other, and that's a reduction of the wine tasting and a reduction in the retail. And it's not just a reduction in retail, but it's a transition from antiques to home decor. And the wine tasting use is being conducted at a greater intensity, both in terms of area. I mentioned it's grown from about 200 square feet to approximately throughout the 1,000 square foot space, but they're also able to serve a large number of guests, and that's because of the way the space is laid out into different rooms. It's sort of uniquely situated to do that. So parking is potentially the greatest impact of the use. And we know that we don't have an on-site parking lot because this is a more typical downtown development where the building comprises nearly the entire lot. We see the building elevations at back of sidewalk, and there's no room for an on-site parking lot. And it's probably more similar to what you see in St. Helena, but you have many buildings that follow the same design, and they offer public parking to accommodate the need, which we don't typically do here in town. So what is the minimum parking demand for the use? Well, the municipal code says it's 1 space for each 250 square feet of floor area for retail use, and that applies to retail in general, whether it's antiques, whether it's the home decor, or really whether it's the wine tasting use. And that would equate to 8 spaces for this business. And so how is parking accommodated in the absence of a lot? Well, there is on-street parking. There are 3 spaces on Washington. There are another 3 spaces on Mulberry. And these are public spaces. They're not dedicated to the use, but they're probably most often used by Hill Family, Bistro Gentil, and Ranch Market. There's also parking accommodated in the community center parking lot, which does serve a public parking purpose at those times when the community center isn't reserved for a private event. And it's probably employees that use the lot most often for that purpose. Then there are also the tours that bring guests to the property, And this allows a single vehicle to bring up to 10 people at once, and that also minimizes some of the parking impact. And we know that Hill has been operating at its general intensity for some time, and there have been no identified impacts, and it's because of the location downtown where there is on-street parking, and that's separated from the residential areas, and because of their close proximity to the community center. So there are fewer impacts right outside the immediate area. Another element is the modification to the retail use. And since Hill Family was approved in '06, the town has enacted the retail diversity policy, and that requires that 25% of the space be devoted to a non-wine related retail item. And as I mentioned, they're proposing the home decor to satisfy this standard. And I just remembered I had a slide with one slide on it, and that shows the floor plan. And as you can see from this floor plan, shown in blue are the areas devoted to the retail part of the operation, with the pink designating the wine tasting, and the blue represents a full 37% of the floor area, which is well in compliance with the 25% standard and meets the requirement. There's also the issue of food service, and a question has arisen whether the boxed lunches are a violation of meal service for wine tasting rooms, so I quickly wanted to touch upon that. Staff doesn't believe it's a violation based on the definition of wine tasting room. And the boxed lunches are brought in only occasionally. They occur 1 or 2 times a week. They are provided by the tour company rather than by the Hill Family Tasting Room. And they are provided after the wine tasting use rather than with it, as a more typical wine and food pairing where you're complementing the elements of the wine. And food is not prepared or plated on site. So it represents an occasional non-essential element of the business, and it doesn't rise to the level of food service that's envisioned by the definition and the restrictions, because the concern there is that we don't want our wine tasting rooms functioning as restaurants. And I don't think that that's what's happening here, because, like I say, it's non-essential and it's more an ancillary part of the business. So we don't have a problem with that. And just touch once again on the fact that this is a tasting room, so the pours are limited to 2 ounces. There are no bottles or glasses sold for consumption on site. Staff is supportive of the application to formalize the use. We're recommending approval subject to the conditions in the resolution.
All right, thank you. Before I ask for council questions, I want to let Councilmember Hall make a disclosure statement.
We started too fast.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I should have stopped you, but I figured, we'll just let it go. So previously I've consulted with the town attorney, and he's advised me that while discussion on wine tasting room regulations within the town of Yountville will have no direct impact upon the operations of my employer, Cliff Lady Vineyards, to the extent that there may be indirect impacts upon my employer, these economic impacts are not significant enough under the regulations of the FPPC to result in my disqualification. At this time, I will continue to elect to participate, but I'm required to disclose that I'm an employee of Cliff Lady Vineyards as its chief financial officer. Thank you.
And we hadn't technically started the public hearing.
That's true. So everyone's aware now.
Any questions of the staff report? Councilmember Moeller.
I just have a question, not specifically to their parking, but parking in general. Let's just say, for an example, we have a few vacant lots. Somebody comes in and wants to build, but they don't want to provide parking, and they use, this is an example.
I'm sorry, can you rephrase what your question is?
Okay,
I'm
so
not
that's what I'm concerned.
Okay.
My concern is that somebody else comes to town and they say, we want to do a use exactly like this. And we
Okay.
don't want to
But not
provide
parking.
parking. So, and they use this as a precedent.
Well, what's different here is this is considered a legal non-conforming use because the retail use was in place before the parking standard, and so they've been operating as retail use that's been unbroken. It hasn't been abandoned, and it's specific to the retail use that's been occurring. If a new use wanted to come in, let's say,
At this site or a different site?
even at this site, if it
Okay.
was an intensification of the use beyond retail, we would have concerns because they would not be able to meet the parking requirement, and they wouldn't be entitled to this legal nonconforming status.
Okay.
A new business, if they're coming into a vacant parcel or any other parcel, they're required to address the town's current parking regulations. So, in my opinion, it doesn't really set precedent.
Okay, because it's a legal non-conforming use. Great, okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll formally open the public hearing and invite Mr. Hill as the applicant to come forward and let us know your thoughts.
Thank you, Mayor Dunbar, Council. I think Sandra summed it up perfectly. Since we took over the building in 2006 from the Rothwells, George and Alice got out right at the right time because antique sales were red hot up until probably '05. They were doing a couple $100,000 a year. And then shortly thereafter, when we took over, it was dropping down to around $50,000, $40,000, $30,000 in sales, retail sales. And we hadn't really established our tasting room. But the unique thing about that spot is that we can do very little marketing, and because of its storefront location, I would say roughly 90% of the guests that come don't actually park a car. They're staying at hotels in town, and they just happen to walk in the doors. It used to be a big bed in the front window there for many years that brought people in to buy antiques from George and Alice, and we've replaced that with some stuff that is a designer from Marin, Brian Preusker, has aided us in putting in the front as more of the draw. So a lot of people will come in now, and the retail items are the hook, and then our sales associates are trained to ask them if they'd like some wine. And, hopefully they want to taste, get some wine, and get some retail. But on the front of the building, you'll notice it still says Antique Fair. And that's what really sprang this whole deal is we have so many people walking in saying, well, where are the antiques if it's an antique fair? And we've cut down significantly on what we carry. We still have a few items, but they're fairly pricey. And so I think a lot of people are misled from time to time walking in. It's not a clear indicator of what we're actually advertising in there. Hill Family Estate Wines is at the top, and what I'm proposing is to put home decor where it currently reads Antique Fair. And everything else, I think, Sandra, we had time to chat, and I thought the report was really good. So, yeah.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant? Seeing,
Well, actually, just
Councilmember
one.
Dornbecker.
Yes. Mr. Hill, are you concerned that now the home decor seems to be the buzzword, for the next marketing of things with wine tasting here in Yountville? Does that concern you?
No, it doesn't, because we really transitioned. While we had a lot of the antiques, when we hired the designer, he was at Macy's for 27 years.
Okay.
So we relied heavily on his experience, and he thought that the things that we were selling were too expensive. Large antiques that carry a couple $1,000s in value is a lot for somebody to spend, but to focus more on items that are $50 and under. And the unique thing is that a lot more of the town residents have actually come in, especially during Christmas, to do a lot of their shopping. And we have a lot of people that pop in that are going to dinner parties or forgot something, and they get a lot of things. So I think home decor, perhaps we were on the cutting edge of adding that. I know that there's been a lot of complaints that there isn't a lot of places to shop. In Yountville, at least people have said that lately, and so we're thrilled that they choose our place to come in and do their shopping from time to time. Yeah, but I'm not concerned.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
Any other questions? No?
Just an incidental comment that I'd like to make related to this application, as Sandra alluded to. This use predates, Hill Family is one of the town's oldest tasting rooms, and it predates our retail diversity component. The footnote, though, that I want to make is that we've often used this tasting room as a model to show that the two uses can be compatible. So it's kind of ironic that what was once outside of that model is now coming full circle and will be coming under that program. But I just want to kind of, in some ways, what we're really doing is cleaning up a transition, if you will, in a business that's more reflecting what's also been cleaned up on the part of the Townsend.
All right. Thank you.
Any other? Okay, thank
I
you.
don't think we have any other questions. And I'm not seeing, we do have a couple representatives of the public here in case they want to chime in on this. I know you're here about something else, but I want to give you that chance. Seeing no others, I'll close the public hearing and invite the council to discuss this item. Councilmember Moeller, would you like to begin a discussion?
I think this is great. If this is your change in retail that is going to work best, I'm all for it. There's no doubt that you have the best window shopping in Yountville, so I'm really glad the retail diversity is working not only for us but for you as well, and good luck.
Councilmember Hall?
I'll echo that, and just again, thank you for maintaining at least 25% of the retail diversity policy. I know it is it can feel onerous, but for those businesses that are doing business in Yountville, it's something that we require, obviously, and as part of a permitting process for a secondary use for a winery or a tasting room. And going to 37% shows, again, your continued support of that. I would also, like to stipulate that, I was unaware that you were in a legal non-conforming use, and I drive down that street probably 2 times a day. So obviously the impact has been immaterial or maybe not at all to anyone who would potentially go down that street that would be a resident. So I encourage and can support the project.
Thank you. Councilmember Dornbecker?
Well, I also support it. I think it's wonderful that you will have 37% retail available and with a reasonable price point, so that members of our community can also take advantage of your beautiful things. So I don't see anything that I can't support. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Mueller?
I just wanted to address the box lunches because that was something that staff wanted. I have no problem with how that's occurring now.
Yeah, and I brought that question up as I read through the staff report, and staff didn't raise that as a concern. I did, and I got a response from Sandra that was satisfactory about the fact that it's not a significant component of their daily operation. Because I've been very sensitive to our tasting rooms and their impacts on our restaurants. So that was just something I wanted to point out when we were considering this.
Oh, and Mayor Dunbar, if I could.
Actually,
One other thing.
we don't even need you to.
Oh, comment? Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that Yountville Deli, Oakville Grocery, and Valeria's we're there. If you
Yeah.
guys needed to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay.
You're about to get what you want, so don't worry about it. The one thing I did want to mention, though, is the concern I have about the expanded tasting room use is the impacts on touring companies coming and how they, we have a history around town of some of the touring vehicles not acknowledging red zones or non-parking areas, stopping in the middle of the streets to let their clients out. That's going to be on you to make sure that they comply with basic, rules of the road. You're going to take on potentially more of an impact using group, touring companies with your additional touring tasting capacity. So I would just kind of caution you that you make sure that your the relationship you have with your regular drivers and regular tour companies realize that they could be impacting you negatively if they don't follow the rules. And as you know, you're right across the street from the sheriff's substation, so it may not be the smartest thing for them to park illegally or do anything else that's inappropriate when they're picking up and dropping off your customers. But with that, I think this is, and the staff report even acknowledged that typically this would be an administrative approval because everything complies with existing rules, which is always nice and refreshing for us to deal with. So I don't think I really need to go in any further detail, but I think this totally makes sense, and I think the home decor component is definitely the right direction to go. You guys, you crunch your own numbers, so you know what's going to sell. So with that, I invited a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 3209-14, approving use permit amendment and sign permit to allow an expansion of the wine tasting room use into the showroom area and to substitute home decor in place of antiques to satisfy the retail diversity requirement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous approval. Congratulations.
Thank you. Now, one question. So, do I need to wait any length of time to put the home decor, Sandra?
You can talk to Sandra about
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific. Thanks, guys.
You can't do it tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Okay, we're going to move on to our administrative item regarding our George C. Yount Mill grinding stones.
So although I drafted this staff report with help from the 50th Anniversary Committee, I'm going to turn it over to Margie because this is really her baby project and she has put a ton of time and effort into researching it. So I would like her to introduce it to you.
Okay, Councilmember Moeller.
All right, great. This project has come about as part of our 50th Anniversary Ad Hoc Committee, and we've had Councilmember Dornbecker is a member on that committee. We have a representative from the Veterans Home, from our Arts Commission, from the Chamber, and several staff members, and John Holt from the Napa Historical Society. So we've got a really nice team working on lots of different things, and we wanted to bring this forward tonight because we are placing this in front of the community center, and these stones have kind of come to us through a bit of a circuitous route. The person who donated the stones, her name is Martha Husey, and she is the great-granddaughter of Frederick Ellis, who purchased the mill from George Yount in 1870. Frederick Ellis actually went to work for George at his mill in 1863. And these millstones then made their way into Napa to be part of the Stoddard Mill. And when Martha was fairly young, she heard about the millstones were located in a garage in Napa that the Stoddards owned. And so she was able to talk her mother into getting them back. And Martha was married to a man who together they had a moving company, so they were able to actually move these very heavy stones and get them at their property. And then they realized that they were very important artifacts and donated them to the Napa Historical Society, who then felt that over time that they really should be part of the Napa Valley Museum and Yountville's history. And in the year 2002, our Public Works Department went and got the grinding stones that were at the Corporation Yard on Silverado Trail, and they've been in our Corporation Yard for the last 14 years. So, well, let's see, 12 years. So I think that it is certainly time. They've moved around the valley. They haven't gone too far. That with a part of our 50th anniversary, that we share them with our public and acknowledge George's contribution, to our community, and these grinding stones, I think, will add a lot of interest and education to our community. But more importantly, I would like to ask Gordon Uther to come up and talk to us about some of the designs that we've been working with him on, to tell you a little bit about what is actually going to happen.
Welcome. This must be a
Nice
big
to be
deal.
back.
We got you all the way up here from Napa.
That's all right. Everything comes from Napa. You know that.
Yeah.
Including the millstones. Yeah, so I'm not sure what part to talk about, but I don't know how much y'all have seen. But basically, the millstones are sitting at my studio now. Hopefully, they won't be there for 12 years.
Yeah.
One of them is in need of some repair. One of the steel rings is busted off. And we've been working together to identify the most logical location over by the community center, logical being that it's practical to install, that it's very visible to the public, and it's not an impediment, but something that's adding to the experience of being in that part of town. So the first thing that I did is, once I went up there, so originally it was going to be under that eave where the bench was, and it's just too tight in there, and they're kind of massive. Not kind of massive, they're massive, and they're extraordinarily heavy. And you just can't push them up against the wall, so you've got to give them some room to breathe. So we had that one planted area. Is everybody familiar with the site already? Or yes?
There's a photo in our staff report
Oh,
that
right.
shows.
I should have read the staff report.
Yeah.
I'm on the planning commission. I don't read those either.
But
there,
we do need some description because the photo just basically has an arrow to a
So-
general area.
I can clarify that.
Please.
So if you're looking at the community hall building, there's a planter on each side of the entrance, and this would be
Oh,
the
it's on the
planter
back.
to the right side if you're looking at it.
Right.
So it's in proximity to, that's Lisa's office with the one window there.
So right, so where that one window is, there's a footprint. I can't remember now. It's maybe 7
5
feet
by 12.
12 feet or something. So it worked out kind of nicely. So I put this super ghetto rough model together, but it's to scale. And so this is the core, the windows back here. All right. So Margie and I are working on putting some sort of narrative together with some images. Probably be printed on steel kind of thing. So people tend to like to read narratives and what do those mean and why are they there and that sort of thing. And it leaves a little bit of area to do a little bit of landscaping, basically. Okay, so the image that you have in your staff report, that was an early one. I wasn't really feeling that, so I mean I can. May I
Go ahead and
approach
hand them to
or-
Michelle, and she'll.
Okay, so pass that around. So we just got that done a couple of days ago. Margie hasn't even seen it yet, but that's kind of where it's going. What we're trying to do is make it all about the millstones and not fancy. We're not trying to make it into a sculpture. We're really trying to just display it in a intelligent way. If there's any kind of more earthquakes in the future or whatever, so that it's not going to roll off of there like Fred Flintstone tires or something. So, and it would be mechanically fastened. So, somebody just went all crazy with the crane at 3 in the morning and tried to steal them. They can't. So, I don't know what else to share, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the council? I have a question of cost, and it says there's a budget, but it doesn't explain what we're talking about at all.
Two things. One, the council has previously appropriated a $50,000 budget, and if you may recall at your last council meeting, an overview of the proposed expenditure plan. So right now that is covered within the $50,000. We are going to be evaluating whether there's a few additional things the committee may recommend, but for the most part, the elements are there within that structure. The other thing that I want to share is part of the reason we're in front of the whole council is it's council policy that any permanent installation, and I use the word installation rather than sculpture because as Mr. Huther mentioned, this is not a public art sculpture governed under the Arts Commission. This is similar, that I would say, to the memorial that we did with the World Trade Center artifact, but it still requires that the council make a determination that the permanent display and the location is appropriate. So that's what we're really here working on. To the mayor's concern, the total budget, that is part of the responsibility. We'll be having a budget report with that, but you've already allocated $50,000. The two council members and staff are working on that, and we're probably either you'll hear from them about maybe they want a few dollars more for a couple of things they want to add, or you as a whole will tell them no, stay within their $50,000. But either way, within their current prioritization, there's 3 or 4 projects that they've identified as their primary goals, and all of those are achievable within the $50,000. And there's a little bit within the Public Works budget, like the pad and some things that are within existing budgets. So I hope that answers your budget
Well, it didn't
question.
really.
If I could maybe speak to that, so.
It's under $50,000.
Well, yeah,
sounds
but yeah,
like.
but don't
I'm
look
sorry,
at me.
you're
I'm
asking
not-
for the specific?
Yeah.
I wish I was getting 50 for this. but
He's
no,
only getting 20.
Well, around 20. We haven't job cost. It could be a little less. It might be a little bit more. So
Say that again?
It could be a little bit, lots more. You can't put a price on a good time. But
Yes, we can.
So we're purposefully designed it in such a way that it would not only be kind of aesthetically neutral because it's not a sculpture, but we just want to display them properly, but also do it in the most cost-effective way possible. So we're using repurposed steel that we have already at our studio. And since we have this now, what we think is the final design, we just want to run it by our structural engineer, make sure that's cool, and then we'll do a formal job costing, then we'll get back to Margie and see what it is. But we understood what the budget goal was going in, but we don't have a detailed budget right now. I can tell you that our scope was to include designing it, figuring out how to build it, get it up here, and bolt it down. So y'all are taking care of the crane, y'all are taking care of the foundation. We'll help with that, talk about depth and the footprint and all that. If you want to do lighting, that's on you as well.
And
which I would do if you could.
And the storyboard would be additional as well.
No, that's part of ours.
That's part of
I volunteer to take that on. They're not really horribly expensive unless you're going to do the whole thing in cast bronze, and then it's not included. But those things, I mean, they get then because of the letters and stuff.
Sure.
It'll have to get pretty big. So we want to start with the beef first, which is all the steel work and all of that, and then we're going to see what we feel like we still have left over in the budget to get the best possible material and technique to put the signage together. But it's important to note that we want to add some photographs, historical photographs, one of them which I see in the staff report there, that will be part of the narrative. So people have kind of a context of where it came from.
And the repairs you talked about that were necessary for at least one of them, that's also inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's basically you have a steel ring that rusted through, so we're either going to patch it or make you a new steel ring and weld it on there.
Great. Any questions? Councilmember Hall.
I mean, first of all, it's very intriguing, and the whole history behind it, I think, is really wonderful for the community. Did you guys look at or evaluate any other sites? I guess is one of the questions I would have, or was it that's got to be the site? I mean,
well, so it was Town Hall. Town Hall is the community center. Bang. Okay, and so walked around there, and that was what I felt was the logical place. I'm not attached to it, but it seemed logical to me. If y'all want to walk it and suggest something else, but this kind of gives you a sense of how much space. This gator board, this white here, this is the size of the footprint that's landscaped right now. So you can see that, even then you just kind of barely made it in there. We don't want to necessarily have people walking around the back of it, so the wall's right here, but you can have a really good view all the way around. But again, you're welcome to walk around town, see if there's a better place.
Well, I'm not very aesthetic personally. I don't know anything about that stuff. I'm just curious whether other sites were evaluated.
Well, one thing to add to that is that one important aspect of the stones, I mean, they are freshwater quartz, so they're, pretty hardy, but they do need to be generally protected from the elements. I've been working with a millstone expert up at the Bale Mill on this project, and this site right in front of the town hall does give us protection in the back and on one side, and then I think it was also in the staff report, probably after we get them installed next year, there will probably be some type of a aesthetically compatible overhang that keeps
some sort of awning on there, and I'm
wind and
offered to happy to
snow
consult on
and,
that if you need any help.
Sleet and hail
you guys can
and all
figure
that
it out.
stuff. But as Mr. Huther did discuss, we were going to have them more in front of where Sam's office door is, the one that she never goes in and out of in her office. But the concrete there just wasn't. These weigh over a ton each, so we've got 2 tons. There's a whole lot of metal here, so we've got 2+ tons of weight that has to be supported. And there's also a sewer drain there that we wouldn't have access to, and that whole concrete out in front of that area would have to be torn up and repoured to support the weight of this. So this one pad that you can actually see from the photo will be dug into the ground, and then you really won't see it because we'll have a slight bark covering or whatever, and the stones will just appear to be sitting there, but they'll be well supported by a lot of concrete and rebar underneath there. So we were somewhat, and there's a lot of other kind of monuments. We have the Big Rock, and there's several other pieces right out in the area by, the mayor's Christmas tree and the flagpole, where a lot of people, I think, when we see them stopping all the time to read those. So we thought this would just kind of add to that historic component at that site as well. So
It's almost like an outdoor museum in a lot of ways, or it's becoming that. It's kind of cool.
And the way this is set up, because there's a side on the south side, you can actually kind of go behind and kind of see the back of these stones and each side, which kind of adds to the whole 3D of the top is the runner stone and the bottom one is the bed stone.
And that's the
And you can get-
design's emblematic of what it would have looked like when it was actually running.
Well, when it's actually running, one sits on top of the other, but you can actually see the cuts in here on how the grain, if they were running, because one goes in the opposite direction of the other, would actually grind the grain into flour.
Okay.
So you can get close enough to see that part, and also they're not solid; they're pieces, and they came from a valley in France, which was very typical of the high quality millstones that were here. And you can see how they're all kind of pieced together. That's why that band is very important, because there's actual pieces from the quarry that were then made into a round stone, and the band holds them together. And we'll be working with Rob Grassi at the bale mill too, because we want to make sure that moisture doesn't get in between the bands and cause more moisture and rust with the design. So we have his great expertise to kind of help with the project.
If I might add a point of interest, so if you look at your staff report, you look at the image of the two millstones. The one on the left is actually the milling surface, and the one on the right is not. Okay, so that's kind of, well, the ugly side. So it's got concrete or something on there, and those two kind of came together, and you didn't really see the milling surface, and it was open or whatever. So we're displaying these such that only the milling surfaces are out. So these two surfaces are the milling surfaces. So this back part and this underside is kind of the not as attractive side.
So it would be as if you took the vertical stone and lowered it flat on top would
That's
be the
right.
proper. Okay. Any other questions? Councilmember Dorn
I
Becker?
just wanted to say I'm delighted that we're preserving a piece of our history like this, and I commend my committee member. And I'm also happy to hear, I just want to confirm that the design portion on the budget that I have seen so far, it looked like that was a separate amount, but you're saying that it is included.
Yeah, of course. It's pretty typical in my business to have a design retainer to at least get that part done.
Right.
And it kind of shows that you're really serious. But yes,
We're serious.
We're factoring that in. Well, I know I have them at the studio, so so yes, that was
Okay.
the 20,000 that we discussed was to include me designing it,
Okay,
me making it,
Great.
and me getting it here.
great. Anyway, I think it's going to be a great project. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll return the discussion to the council. Thank
Am
you
I
very
dismissed?
much. You are dismissed.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Gordon.
Any questions or comments?
Nope.
I think before, if you were about to make a motion, I just want to mention, I was concerned that there was too much going on there, but when I heard not only, Gordon, what you just said tonight, but also hearing from our staff about the fact that you were not only consulting, but you were blessing the site and the location and the presentation. I've kind of come around to the thought of all these different elements can potentially work together rather than working against each other. So that was important to me. At some point, I worry that they start to detract from each other, but I don't think we're there. But we just need to be conscious of that going forward. That's right. Totally out of place. Well, I figured you weren't going to jeopardize the sculpture with the installation. So with that, Councilmember Hall?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 3210-14, approving the permanent display of the George Calvert Yount grinding stones from the original Yount mill to be placed at the Yountville Community Center.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Gordon, you're welcome to stay the rest of the meeting if you'd like.
I've got plenty of those back home in Napa. Bye.
Bye.
And thanks to our ad hoc committee, council members Moeller and Dornbecker, for your continued operation, even though your budget was just cut in half. That was your choice.
Oh, we'll be back.
Okay, moving on to staff informational reports. We have one that's been presented, a flood wall informational update or a report. Is there anything that we need to go into? Are you going to give us a little presentation?
I'm just going to give you a little update
Great.
on where we are. So after the earthquake, we had a couple of calls about about some cracks in the flood wall, and staff went out and took a look at them. And on October 6th, we decided to bring FEMA in and talk to them about it. And we talked to them, and they said that we would be eligible for funding repairs if the cracks were caused from the earthquake, and they encouraged us to go out and get an engineering review. So staff went out to 4 engineering firms and asked for bids on doing a report for the damages, for an inspection and a report on the wall, and 4 structural engineering firms. 2 of the firms had been original engineers on the wall, and the other 2 were large structural firms, one in San Francisco and one in Santa Rosa. And the bids came back ranging from $12,000 down to nothing. And we chose the firm that wasn't going to charge, HDR. They're one of the original engineers on the wall. We were concerned that they weren't going to charging any money for their work, and we asked them the question, why aren't you charging? Because the other firms are, and they said that they do. This is what they do. They do pro bono work for communities in crisis after earthquakes, that sort of stuff. They did many inspections in Napa for at no cost. They did many inspections in Japan after the earthquake and tsunami at no cost. So we felt that that was a pretty high level of integrity that they were showing. So we chose them. They came out last week and the week before, and they walked the wall, and they documented and photographed all the cracks. We're awaiting a report at this point. They did happen to mention that most of the cracks, most of the small cracks are shrinkage cracks. They're natural cracks from the concrete, from construction. There is one spot where the wall shifted near the pump station, so that they will be looking at that in a more serious manner. So we'll get back to you when we get the formal report.
Did they give you a time frame on that at all?
It looks like next week sometime.
Just a couple other follow-up actions so the council and the community are aware. One, we have been coordinating with FEMA, and the objective would be that if a repair is necessitated, that we will move forward with FEMA. As you know, the area has been declared a national federal disaster area, so we are eligible for funding assistance. And that's what we're currently working on, is that evaluation, and then we will meet with FEMA. You will also be seeing a resolution on your November 18th council meeting, moving forward in the official protocol process for declaring us and us moving forward on that. So the good news is we will find out if there is an issue, and more importantly, be able to move forward and fix the issue and do so with as minimal exposure to the town's general fund, where the repair costs, we would likely be paying approximately 6.75% of the repair cost, and currently state OES and FEMA would combine for the other share. So it's really incumbent. Staff is really making sure we do this right, because if we don't, then the town's general fund will need to absorb the cost. But we've made sure they understand that the original flood wall was built with a partial FEMA grant, so we really want to make sure that the flood wall can do what it's designed to do, which is keep water out when we have a flood at some point, which, knock on wood, we will have. So that's because kind of we want to let everybody know that, you know, there has been some minor damage throughout the community. We're working on that. Also, we've been communicating, changing gears slightly, but we've also been communicating with some of the businesses that have had damage that they can work with SBA and some other content. And I am pleased to report that our red tag facility, Maison Fleury, has been reopened. So there's still some repair work they're doing, but the building is structurally sound. So
I want to, just to get back to the flood wall specifically, am I correct in that any FEMA funding would be to reimburse us so that we would actually incur the cost up front and then file for reimbursement, which could take some period of time?
that is correct. Actually, there may be, depending on, there's a threshold dollar amount which we will probably qualify for, that if that's the case and it's about $125,000, FEMA would actually give you an upfront grant, and then you would have the conditions. But you are correct. In essence, we need to be prepared to pay for it and then get reimbursed. So
You're saying if it's under 125, they pay you up front?
they may provide a one-time grant, and then we have to show the documentation. And I think this is a good point that I want. We have adequate financial reserves to cover, and this is in part what your emergency reserve fund would be for. The dollar amount that we're looking at here, we're very fortunate is small, but you're correct. That would be the two ways. One is if the dollar amount comes in, it'll be a grant, and then we have to show how we've accounted for it. Secondly, it would be a reimbursement where we need to encumber the project, pay for it, and then seek reimbursement. Now, the good news is they tell us that their repayment schedule is supposed to be expedited within 90 days.
Okay. Yeah, good luck with that. And then the smaller cracks you talked about that are basically kind of wear and tear,
Shrinkage,
we would have
yeah.
to take on that unless there was some direct connection potentially to the
I-
FEMA repair might help cover
I'm
that.
hoping that the engineering firm gives us some sort of a guide on how to repair some of that stuff, routing it out and epoxying the cracks and that sort of
Right.
stuff.
That would be on us,
That
though.
would be on us,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Looking forward to that update, and hopefully we'll be covered. I don't see any other informational reports, so we'll go on to, are there any council member meeting reports of interest to this group? I think it's been a fairly light meeting schedule lately. Kicking back in to full speed, I think, soon. Seeing none, any other specific comments? Councilmember Hall.
Hopefully,
You have one line of entry, I see it.
just one line. Hopefully, we will see everyone tomorrow at the Veterans Home for the celebrity chefs luncheon from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You'll get your black and whites on and your hats and your hair nets, and I don't have that issue, but we'll see you all there.
The key is veteran volunteers know to wear ball caps, and then they don't have to wear the hair nets.
Hence
You can
my
always
hair.
tell the first timers.
Alternatives.
Yeah.
Yeah, you always know the first timers. They're the ones that didn't know that, and they wear the hairnet. Few choose to do that option.
I'll wear a shower cap.
And certainly the following week, November 11th, we have the Veterans Day ceremonies.
Right.
Any other upcoming, Samantha? We must have something between now and our next meeting on the 18th. Do we?
No.
Wow.
I mean, we have stuff, but not significant community-wide
So not
events.
until we'll be meeting before we have the Festival of Lights on Friday
And the
after
community
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving dinner on Thanksgiving.
We have two seatings, correct?
2 seatings,
And
1
those
and
are
2:30.
1 and 2:30?
1 o'clock and 2:30.
And tickets are available for that?
I believe they're still available, yes. You have to call Paul Moyer to reserve your spot.
Got it. Okay, we'll readdress that on the
Or you-
18th, just as a reminder.
And you can
also.
always call the community center, and we'll provide that information.
Great, thank you. I know the Moyers have taken it over the last couple of years, very generously doing that. Seeing no other reports or announcements, I see that we do not have a need for closed session tonight. So seeing no other business, just make sure folks still have time, if they have not turned in their ballots, to do so. And hopefully everybody has voted today. And with that, we will adjourn to our next regular council meeting on Tuesday, November 18th at our regularly scheduled time of 6 p.m. Thanks, everybody.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, yes. that.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
See? See how well we work together?